You tell me if you can see me.
I need you to get in. Right?
Okay.
Okay, I see not the top of your head. Your head's cut off a little. There we go. I see your whole head. That's a good shot of you. Now show me some food.
All right, so then when we go food, let's see if I can do this.
See, grazing with the chopping board. Then you need to just lift it slightly.
And then when
you cook on that same spot.
when I'm done slicing, I can move it over,
Then
but I can also
need to go up.
can also do that.
Yeah. Do you want?
I can see it.
Okay, we need your can out of the way. We need clean towels.
Clean towels, yes.
Come look in the shot and see. You can see your tripod with your light.
It's all right.
Yeah. Okay.
How about that?
That's
Better?
still in the shot, but come see.
All right. There's people on already.
Would you like me to say something too?
Yeah.
Hello?
Let's see.
You say hello.
I'll say something. Hello? Hey guys, can you hear me? Is the sound okay?
Put it in the chat box.
Put it in the chat box. Who's there?
Got 5 people.
5 people, all right. Who is it?
6 people.
Anybody say anything?
Nope. Unable to connect chat. Let's try again.
What's it saying?
Unable to see chat.
Let's take a look. Hey guys, be patient. We're just trying to figure out the tech here. They're on the right thing. All right, I think we have the chat back.
Unable to connect chat.
Let's try again later. All right, so I'm not seeing any chat. And that was me.
That was you.
Well, I guess we're not seeing anybody respond. Hey guys, we're not quite at 5:30 yet. We're just trying to get the tech squared away. Everybody enjoy the Brian Barnacle original artwork. If you haven't checked out Brian's artwork, Brian Barnacle, Barneclo, out of San Francisco, an amazing guy. Nothing?
Jump on us.
All right, well, see if Suzanne's going to jump on as a guest, and we'll see what's happening. Oh. Okay. Okay, you can see other people chatting. Thanks, Abby sending me a text. Thanks for sending me a text. You saw our test, so you can see the test coming out. We just can't see what people are asking.
I'll do it on mine. I can see it on mine.
You can see the chat that people are doing there. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is a first for us. This is a live demonstration / cook along trying to do the absolute simplest thing that I could think of, or maybe not simplest, but trying to keep it really simple. Just a few ingredients, because I know ingredients are kind of tougher to come by these days. But we're going to start off with Pommesana. All you really need is a potato. We've got a russet potato, and we've got a clean kitchen. We've got some butter. I have melted the butter. However, you can use whole butter. You could use clarified butter. Clarified butter would be the better choice if you could. But because I am a fan of black pepper, a little bit of the milk solids in the butter, getting some brown on them, really not a big deal. So does anybody know why? First of all, clarified butter, does anybody remember what it is? Does anybody know what it is? Anybody in the chat?
Justin, we got Abby, we got Steve.
We got people raising their hands.
No.
Anybody? I know Abby knows. So butter is basically.
Stephen Rafferty says, I got it.
Oh, Stephen Rafferty, yes. Chef Rafferty, definitely. Chef Raff definitely knows.
Justin Richardson wants to know, could you clarify?
Could I clarify? That's so good. See, I wish I had come up with that. Thanks, Chef. So clarified butter is, butter is in its purest form, in its chilled form, is an emulsion of water, milk solids, and fat. And when we clarify butter, we remove the water and we remove the milk solids. And it allows us to have a little higher smoke point, and it allows us to have a little cleaner cook to it. It doesn't get quite as speckly, and it gets maybe a little extra burnt, a little bit of extra noisette or kind of a nutty flavor when it cooks. But so we're gonna have whole butter today that's just melted, and then I'm going to use a single russet potato to make a small Pommesana. And then the Pommesana is a traditional sort of layered potato dish. I'm just going to cut little circles or little rounds out of the potato, and arrange them with one circle down in the center and then a little spiral around that. And then I'm just going to get it nice and built up and cook it with a lid on there to kind of steam it. And hopefully we'll get a nice crispy side and a creamy done inside and a crispy bottom as well. Anybody know why I'm using a russet potato instead of maybe a red potato or a Yukon Gold? Anybody firing up an answer there? I'll give you a second to type it out. There's a good reason to use the russet. Yes. All right. There's an answer from here in the kitchen. I won't say who it is. But yeah, this is a starchy potato, and a starchy potato is going to hold together better as a final product. So as I'm getting this, as I get this thing hot, the starch is going to release a little bit. Starch likes to kind of hold on and grab onto other starches. And when you've got kind of a medium amount of water or a low moisture content and a lot of starch, it wants to hold together. And so we'll have something at the end that won't slide all over the place. And so we're going to be careful to preserve the starch. Normally I'd hold potatoes in water, but this I don't want to slice it and then put it in water, because it'll rinse off a lot of the starch, and then I won't have something to hold it together. So I'm going to get started on slicing. Yeah, you got a question there?
Abby asks, I'm using white potatoes. Would those be okay?
Yeah, I'm actually any potato. Potatoes are high in starch anyway, and you can make it out of a white potato. You can make it out of a yellow or red. It actually has a nice appearance if you leave the skin on like a red new potato. You can get it to hold together. You just have to be even more diligent. And then maybe when you're going to flip it, because there'll be that moment when you got to flip it. When you go to flip it, you got to be extra careful, because it can kind of run all over the place. Now, ultimately, when you're done, you're going to have some delicious potatoes. So whether if they're perfectly in this little floral shape or not, maybe not the end of the world. But what I want to do here is I want to kind of move quickly. Once I start slicing this thing, I want to start building it up in the pan. So a couple of things when you're making Anna, keep it nice and tight, kind of smallish when I'm doing these individual ones. I want to get them higher. I don't want a really thin layer, because what can happen is you can get all crust and no creamy inside. You want that dichotomy. You want that difference in textures. You want some crispiness and some creaminess. So here we are. We're going to start cutting this now. Yeah, I got the burner on. Now, the thing that I want to do is just get this really thin. So a mandolin would be a good idea. I don't have a mandolin at home. I'm only making one of these things, so I can probably get this thing nice and thin. I'm going to change the camera here. So we got a one camera, like webcam style production here. Just a little cutting board on top on our stove top. And I'm just going to cut this thing nice and small. I've got a pan back here, or pan over here that I'm going to get hot or warm. And then I'm going to put in just a little bit of clarified butter. See, turn on an extra light. Can you see that now? See everything? I'm going to put in a little bit, sorry, this melted butter in the pan. Okay. Now, so let that warm up a little bit, and I'm going to start cutting the potato. So cut off the end, and I can use that to kind of fill some holes later on. And then I'm just really going to try and get this as thin as I can, especially for the first, say, like inch or inch and a half of the potato, because I want this top layer to be as nice looking as possible. Now, all the potatoes underneath it, doesn't matter quite so much, right? Those are going to be underneath, so you won't see them. All right, flip this over, and I'll start taking some of these ones right from the top. And I got a little bit of sizzle going. And I'm just going to go around the potato. Coming up. Oh, sorry. This is important. So I'm just going to go around, put one in the center, and then I start just doing a little bit of a pattern around. And after I get done going around one time, that's going to be the size of my potato. So I'm going to lift up this one, see if I can get them all in there. So I'll give you a little bit better look at what that looks like. Yes. You don't get production quality like this just everywhere, right? So now I do want to put a little bit of salt and pepper as I'm going. Salt. Got this beautiful antique pepper grinder that I got from my grandmother. Joking. All right, so I got a good start. That's a nice little start there, and I just want that to start getting warm and getting crispy. And then I'm going to just build this up on the outside, okay? Once I have gotten a couple of layers, I'm going to start putting some half layers and some thinner ones on the outside. Let's see, can you get that? So just continuing to cook or to cut here. Maybe I'll finish cutting so I can move over. All right. Any questions while we're out there? Is anybody new? Anybody that's new to school or just new to these kind of cook-alongs, or anybody want to pipe in? How about, how many of you guys are cooking along? How about that? I know some people are just here to kind of check it out and see how it goes. Abby's cooking along with her white potato, and we'll see how that goes. Who? Abby says me. Okay. I want to turn this way back. And again, I'm going to take some of these potatoes and cut them in half so that I can put kind of a layer around the outside. If I keep putting whole slices of potato, then what will happen is I'll get a really tall center and a not so tall edge, and that's going to be a problem for me. So I built that up. I built the edges up a little bit. Can you see? Yeah, I built the edges up a little bit. And now I can put another solid layer on there because it'll be a little bit flatter. Dia. Hi, Dia.
She's watching.
She's watching. Did you say hi to Chef Jack? Dia? All right. So I'm going to put a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper. And why am I not? I mean, I guess I could put a little bit of fat on these layers. What would be a possible issue with putting some fat on these layers? Anybody know? If I ladled a little butter on there, there could be an issue with it not wanting to hold together, right? Make them slippery.
Derek Ladson says looks good and they slide.
They do slide. They will slide. All right, so now I'm trying to get this thing built up. I think I've got a good kind of structure here. I'm going to put just a couple of round ones on top. And this is, if you're a prayerful type, this would be a good time to do that. And hit it with a little bit of salt, and then hit it with another grind of pepper. And then maybe here, I take a little bit of the last part of my butter. And now I want this thing to get done, right? So I'm gonna
has a question.
Hit me, Dia. What is it?
How often do you add salt and pepper?
So, I mean, ultimately, you don't even have to add it once. Let me get back in frame here. Ultimately, you don't even have to add it once, Dia. I mean, you can, excuse me, you can just put it on before you serve. And there's no particular need to add it along the way, except I find that if you do add it along the way, you don't have to have a ton of salt on the outside. So it's just like anytime you're doing layered dishes, lasagna, au gratin potatoes, if you hit those center layers or middle layers a time or two with some salt, then you don't have to worry so much about your final product, having to like make up for a bunch of missing salt. So let's see where we're at here.
So she asks first and last layer. It sounds like it's at your discretion.
Yeah, first and last layer would work, but probably, let's say if you're going to make something that tall, I would do right after you put it down, right after you put down that first kind of little initial layer, and then I would hit it again once in the middle, and then once right before, right near the end, and maybe you finish off at the end. As well as I do, potatoes takes salt. Potatoes can take salt all day long, and if you make something like potato salad, then even the next day, sometimes they want more salt. So don't be afraid to salt it up just a little bit. So, how are you guys doing? Has anybody got one? Abby, you got yours going? Is it going? And I know if you're cooking along, it's kind of hard to also engage in the chat, but we'll try. Okay. Couple of things. Let's brainstorm a little bit here. So what's going on in this pan is important to understand, right? So, I talk a lot when I'm teaching culinary arts about structure. So the structure here is developed from starch, right? But not only starch in this instance, but also like literally in the way that you put it together, right? If you're not precise about how this thing gets put together, then it's going to slide one way or the other. Okay. So next thing, we're depending on starch. So starch, how's that going to work? Well, it has to do one thing. In fact, can anybody answer me what it is that starch does when it finally fully hydrates and what's the starch equivalent of protein denaturation? Does anybody remember? That's a good one too.
Gelatinization.
Gelatinization of starch is
August says that.
August. Oh, is that Chef August? Yeah, I bet.
Abby says yes. She's cooking along. Added Parmigiano Reggiano.
Oh, that's good. Sure. Yeah. The only thing there is not to put too much so that you don't interrupt that kind of starch grabbing onto each other. So if you have a sprinkling of Reggiano in there and the starch can still get together, you'll be in good shape. Is that Chef August? Chef August?
August Inc.
Yeah, that's it. Inch. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He says ringer.
Huh?
He says ringer.
Total ringer. Thank you, Chef, for doing that. So yeah, I'm trying to get these starches to gelatinize. I'm trying to get them to do so in this layered form, so that it'll all stick together, because eventually I got to flip this thing over, right? And if it's completely sliding around, no starches have gelatinized, nothing has bonded together, then I may end up with a mess, That's just the way it goes. This is live. We'll just see what happens. But one other thing I've done is, you guys notice that I covered this. And this is a really interesting food question. Like, when I cover this, what am I doing? Am I sauteing anymore? I don't know. What does the chat say? Am I sauteing anymore once I covered this thing with a lid? Let's take a look. Once I cover this thing with a lid, am I sauteing? Anybody? Maybe it's not that fascinating a question. Maybe it's just fascinating for me.
Justin says, fun fact, making these on the fly during a busy service is not fun.
Not fun. In fact, that's an interesting point to bring up, Chef. What do you do with something like this? Maybe you fire them up beforehand. Maybe they're ready, right about service time, and then you just throw them into a hot oven and warm them up. Maybe you do large ones and cut them into wedges. That's a lot of fun. And what I mean by a lot of fun is not a lot of fun, because when you try and cut this on the fly, in fact, I don't know if I have my knife. I use a lightly serrated sandwich knife to cut these things, and again, it can be pretty dicey. Oh, is that a cutting joke?
You got a couple of responses about the steaming.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Chef Rafferty said no. And
yeah.
Evan Diaz says steaming question mark.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of a steaming. I think it's definitely not a normal saute. It's not what we would call saute in the business. But it's got some of that going on, right? It's got a hot pan, it's got a little fat. The steam we need for a couple of reasons. Number one, steam is of course made out of water. We get this thing to cook a little bit faster and cover the whole thing with steam. And then we're going to prevent one of the things that we really want to watch out for when we're cooking potatoes. And that is, anybody want to guess what happens to potatoes if they're left out in the atmosphere? Anybody? I'm going to do the big reveal in a second. Anybody say anything?
Coach reference, or
Chefs?
chef reference says baking, but I think that he answered that earlier.
All right, now, yeah. So I think the thing to watch out for, huh?
Brown, oxidization.
Yeah, we call it enzymatic browning. That, yeah, it happens in the presence of oxygen. So if you can kind of choke off that oxygen by covering it with a lid and creating some steam, then you end up with something that's going to maintain that white color, or more likely to maintain that white color. Yeah, this is, we're about to show you what's going on here. So this is kind of a steaming slash saute thing going on right now. Here we go. All right, so that's where we're at. So I want this thing to feel.
It's very bright.
It's very bright.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, white balance. Okay, so like in fairness, or in full, this is not the super high pro setup, and because we have a black stove, it's trying to expose for the black stove and trying to give you some detail on the black stove, but then it's hard to see what the potato is. That a little bit better? I don't want it to slide over. Okay, so there we are. So we're gonna put that back on the stove top for a minute. So what I'm trying to do is
Jackson King says looks good close up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So what I'm trying to do is to create this sort of choked off oxygen environment where the starches can gelatinize and really make this thing hold together. I'd like for it to cook, maybe not quite all the way through, but close to all the way through before I flip it. And then all I have to do is put a little bit of color on the other side. Now I got the benefit here. As long as it looks good, it doesn't have to taste good because you guys are not going to eat it. However, I think this thing really generally needs about maybe 20 minutes in an oven or 20 minutes covered like this to finish. I don't know if we're going to go quite that long. I'm going to peek now at the bottom and see what's going on. So the bottom will be the top. When we're done, what we see on what's on the bottom of the pan will be the top, and we hope it's going to look nice. So let's scan back down, and I am going to take a look, and I've got, all right, I've got something that it looks like it's wanting to hold together. It does look like it's wanting to hold together. Oops, how about that right there? Okay. I have a lot of appreciation for the live. I've got a lot of appreciation for the live streams that I've seen with the people that have overhead cameras and these wonderfully exposed, perfectly white balanced, colorful images. We have got the blessing of a good quality webcam that's for like Zoom meetings. And we've got, like I'm sure a lot of you are out there right now, we've got Wi-Fi that is maybe behaving right now, and we don't know what it's going to be like very, from minute to minute, but but we're doing the best with what we can. We can always get better at this kind of stuff. So let's take a look. I think we can flip this thing again because you guys aren't going to eat it. So if it's a little underdone, not a big deal. What needs to happen though is it needs to have released enough starch so that I can flip it and it doesn't fall apart. So luckily I have some experience around flipping these things. I'm gonna pan back to the pan. Did I just pan to the pan? Did that happen? All right. So we're just gonna be careful. We're gonna get underneath here, and this feels pretty solid. I got a little bit of fat rolling around the pan, and I'm using a nonstick. Let's go. Let's have the dramatic moment. You ready? Okay. All right. That's the modest amount of applause. Okay. Let's see. Ooh. Can we do that's too much? There. How about that? Good. All right. So now I can get in here and mess with it a little bit, right? Push in the edge and just tuck it in a little bit. So Anna is supposed to look like a rose or a flower. Put the top back on. Ideally, I'd probably put this in an oven, but again, you know, with a home oven, it just seemed easier to just do it on the top. Okay, now how are we going to tell if these things are done? What do you guys think? How are we going to tell?
Chef Rafferty,
Yep.
skills, chef.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chef. Takes one to know one, Chef Rafferty. Skills right back at you. So, what do we? What was I saying? Oh, got it. I don't remember. In any event, we got this thing. If anybody remembers what I was saying, put it in the chat. We get this thing flipped over and we just want it to be done. How are we going to tell if it's done? Maybe that's what I was asking. How are we going to tell if this thing is done? Because, I mean, obviously you can't stick a hand in there and pull out a little piece of it. So how are we going to tell if it's done? Anybody in the chat? Let's take a look at it again. I mean, that's looking pretty good to me, right? That's looking pretty good to me. But what we want, I don't know.
Texture test with fork, says Evan.
Yeah, so yes, fork's not a bad idea, but it puts 4 holes, and most of your forks are not sharp, right? So maybe if you had a meat fork with 2 sharp points on it, then you could just get 1 in there. That would be a good idea. I like the way you're thinking there. I like to just do paring knife. This works just fine. The paring knife, it works great. And you kind of go in it from an edge where you can't see it. Of course, if you're doing 20 of these, you can test just 1 or 2 and assume that all of them are done. So let's keep going on this and let it finish up. We got a hungry cat, I think is what we have. Yes, we have a hungry cat. While we're here, let's talk about this. This was a piece done by Brian Barnacle. I don't know if Brian's on the stream right now, but he's an artist in San Francisco. And if you're interested in Brian's work, he did this for me, I think for my birthday one year in the late 90s. And he's done some amazing stuff. Look it up on the World Wide Web, on the Googles. Barnacle, Brian, Barneclo. I didn't actually plan for that to be in the shot when we first set it up, but that's kind of nice, huh? All right, so let's take a look. And I'm just going to kind of poke a knife, if I can get the camera or get the food back in frame. I'm just going to take a knife and kind of poke it in the side. And if it goes in and comes back out without any kind of resistance, then you're done. And I think I'm pretty done here. The this is a nice side. I mean, obviously it's got a little look to it. Here, I'll put it on a plate. It's got a little look to it. I'm gonna grab a paper towel. I'll be right back.
It says it's like a noise.
Is it not? Is it no ice? Is it
No.
iceless? Is it noise? Thank you so much for saying that. So here I come in. Boom, let's plate it. Where are we at? Okay. So get underneath. Cut off my stove, like I always totally cut off my stove right here. Yeah. So just get a little bit of paper towel under it. Just try and get that little bit of extra oil off of it. Just go nice and neatly in the center. If it's spreading around a little bit, then you can always just push it back together, right? Okay, so let's voila it. What do you guys think? Is it there?
August says looks great, Chef.
Who is that?
Chef August.
Oh, thank you, Chef August. So this was an idea just based on missing cooking with people, miss very much cooking with people. And, we live in a time when we can do this. When I started cooking, as many of my fellow instructors, I'm sure this is the case, there was no way we could have done this, right? Maybe if we were well off, we could shoot a big old honking video cassette and mail it to somebody. But now to be able to do this live, and it's not just this format, it's Zoom. I looked a little bit at Instagram Live. There's some really cool things that you can do with. I'd like to be able to do this again, and if somewhere in the chat, if you could throw in a suggestion for what you would like to see in the future, I would love to read it. I'd love to respond. Also, if you have a moment and you're there at your computer, if you could press the like button on the video, and if you could subscribe to this station and ring the bell, then you would know when these things come out. Also, share it with your friends. We'd like for this to be a place to come and hang out and cook some food together. And share some ideas and some positivity and just keep the community going, because we will be back and we will be back strong. So I really appreciate you taking this time to tune in today, and I hope that you got something out of it. Before we stop the feed, I'd like to just take a minute and just while I'm feeling a little gratitude, if somebody wants to make a comment or add anything before we leave, if you've got any questions, like I guess I didn't ask if there's any questions about the food itself. That's it. Pretty simple. We could definitely do more. I think with this, it's always nice with some roasted meats or some sliced. Some grilled sliced tenderloin. You got something from me?
We're coming up on 6:04. So
Okay.
just over 30 minutes. You're getting some looks good, Chef.
All right.
Menu posted ahead of time next time. Make sure we have our mise en place.
Okay. All right.
And Chef Rafferty says, see you later.
All right. Thank you, chefs, so much for coming in and for dropping by. And thank you all of the students, and then just the friends and just the folks that are out there that also have wandered into this. Really appreciate you guys taking time. We're going to stop the feed. But again, thanks so much. Hope you enjoy it. Come and check out the channel again. Thanks, guys.